Welcome to the first ever episode of the Fantasy Backups podcast, where we cover Dynasty Fantasy Football in the offseason and then redraft fantasy during the season. This is a laid-back show where we rank players, voice our opinions, and generally argue about fantasy football with the hope that we can entertain and inform you. We're three friends that met in college almost a decade ago, and we've been playing fantasy football together ever since. My name is Alex Murphy, and I'm the host of the show. My close friends tend to refer to me by my last name, so don't be surprised if you hear the other two hosts calling me Murphy most of the time. I make it to the playoffs every single year in our league of record, but I can never quite seem to take home that championship. This is definitely going to be my year, though. I tell myself every single year. I'm a fantasy football research enthusiast, and hopefully that will show up in this podcast.
I'm Jim. I am the most decorated champion of the bunch. These two actually let me win back-to-back-to-back championships. I'm also the most handsome host. I own 2 math centers, and I will never use math to help you in fantasy football.
Hey, I'm Ben. I'm the league commissioner in multiple of our leagues, and that means I'm never going to win. So I'm just going to try and give you the advice that never helps me.
All right, well, there you have it. We are going to give you the advice you need to win, and then we are going to continue to lose. So now that you know all the hosts, we just want to make it clear that we are not professionals, and we're just passionate about fantasy. We're players who've been playing for close to 10 years now. We do this for fun and we entertain and inform. So just enjoy it and know that we suck. Let's start talking about actual fantasy. All right, so to begin with this, we're going to talk about the best immediate producers from the draft. So these are the must-have players if you need players to perform this year. They're the ones that you pick up and will instantly impact your team at a big level. Okay, so we're going to be covering a QB, a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end each. So basically going across the gamut of position types for offense. And then we're going to avoid Barkley, Saquon Barkley, who hopefully you've heard of. He's kind of the gold standard for running back this year in the draft. And he is not somebody that we want to talk about because he's already a unanimous first-round pick. Or first overall pick.
I do want to cut in really quick. That guy is good at football.
All right, so let's hop right into it. We're going to start with Jim. Jim, talk about the QB that you think will have an immediate impact in the draft.
So I'm talking about Josh Rosen. I think if you are looking for a year one player to actually make an impact for you, dynasty or redraft, Josh Rosen is really it. He comes from the most pro-ready offense in college. He took a lot of snaps under center. I mean, that was really what he was known for. Instead of the general college shotgun formation. Right away, he has a Hall of Fame wide receiver 1. I'm hoping he has a wide receiver 2 since I have Kirk on my dynasty team. He has a running back that is, top 3, maybe 4 in the league that can really help him out with checkdowns and just, keeping the defense from focusing on the quarterback. And he has just amazing pocket awareness. He looks a little bit like Rodgers, just dodging defenders in the pocket. So I really think he'll make the most impact year one.
Now, I want to interrupt just for a second so that you guys know that Jim is a Packers fan. So when he says somebody is compared to Rodgers, he really, really likes that player. Also, ignore most of his opinions about the Packers. Yeah, that as well.
Real quick to follow that part up, how much does he compare to Rodgers where he might not start right away? We're talking about high impact players. He might not even be the starter week 1 with Sam Bradford going there too. What do you think about that? That adds to his value or takes away from his value?
I mean, there's already been reports that he's looking to get, possible for week 1 reps. Sam Bradford's been known to be injury prone throughout his career, including last year. I mean, he missed, I think, 13, maybe 14 games in the total season. I just don't see him as that big of an obstacle because I don't see him being healthy.
That's true. Sam Bradford only has about half of a functional knee, which we all know. Any other comments, Jim?
No, that really is my feelings on Rosen. I think he's the best rookie QB out of the gate.
Awesome. All right, so Ben, I think you're next up on the gauntlet over here, so you're up.
All right, sounds good. My QB, the immediate impact for the rookies, I think, is Josh Allen. He's actually my least favorite rookie outside of this draft, that came out of this draft. But just the path to the starting job in Buffalo seems to be the easiest. I mean, he has to beat out A.J. McCarron, who's been kicking around the NFL. I think us fantasy types like him a lot more than the NFL teams do. He still hasn't really started a meaningful game yet. And Josh Allen also has to beat out Nathan, 5 interceptions and 1/2 Peterman. Like, we're not talking about like the cream of the crop here. I really think he has had, the worst kind of combine. He has the worst measurables based on college, but I think he's just going to start week 1. And Buffalo has some weapons. They still got Shady McCoy in the backfield. Like, he should be okay. If you're looking for that guy that might crack a top, 20 quarterback, top 15 quarterback, he's probably the guy to target right out the gate.
I completely agree that he could be a starter day one potentially if he wins out in the early session. I know that Russell Wilson did that about 6 or 7 years ago, where he was the underdog to start right away because there was a person who had been waiting for a while to be a starter, and then he beat him out.
Matt Flynn, yes.
Matt Flynn. See, you would know.
Packers legend, Matt Flynn.
Packers legend Matt Flynn, greatest playoff player of all time. But did he get like 6 TDs?
Took us to the playoff.
Oh, okay, never mind. Well,
I do want to cut in here and just put really quick that we're only about 15 minutes into recording this before Murphy's homerism of Russell Wilson shows. I just wanted to put that out there, that if we're going to call Jim out for Packers, that Russell Wilson thing came out pretty quickly.
Okay, that's totally merited, and Russell Wilson's the best. I'm glad we can all agree.
Well, Murphy's a Dolphins fan. Let's get that clear. He just loves him some Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson was my first notable fantasy QB. I picked him up off waivers my first year playing, or maybe it was my second. I could be wrong about that. And he made a big impact on my team, so I started watching and caring. So you're going to hear a lot of homerism, I guess, or fanism, some isms or others for Russell Wilson from my end throughout the entire podcast, I'd imagine. But that's not the point. The point is we're talking about Josh Allen, correct? So any other points to talk about, Ben, on your end?
Yeah, okay. So you like Josh Allen to make the best immediate impact. I really do not like his receivers. I mean, even Kelvin Benjamin, I didn't like him much on the Panthers. I don't think he'll do much on the Bills.
True, and Zay Jones is having some off-the-field issues too, so we'll have to see how that plays out. He really doesn't have a lot of weapons, but if you want the guy that's starting week 1, Baker has people to go through. Rosen does, Darnold does. So it's just, I think that he has the biggest cliff to fall off of too. But if you want that guy that is immediate, it's probably going to be Josh Allen.
See, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree. I do think, however, that he has a lot of drawbacks. He struggled with accuracy in college. I think he was sub 65% accuracy, which is usually considered a bust and not likely to be drafted high. But because of his measurables with his arm, he can throw like 60-yard bombs all day, apparently, according to the combine. He was drafted early.
He can throw across his chest very well, too, which is very difficult for most QBs to do.
Yeah, and you know who does that really well, Jim? Who throws across their chest really well, Jim? I'm expecting
Rodgers
this is coming next.
Amazing at across the chest throws. Man, back shoulder fades across his chest. He can do it all day.
Yeah, it's like you like Aaron Rodgers, but we both know you don't. So.
No, I love Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, interesting.
I will have his children.
Oof.
One more quick point on Allen. Besides the, I guess not besides, but with the low completion percentage, a lot of turnovers too. He turned the ball over a lot, which in college is usually a big red flag. And he still went pretty high too.
Exactly.
On the bright side of that, though, because Buffalo's defense is not very good, the other team will score and put the Bills behind, so they will have to throw more.
Yeah.
What I think we should dub the Blake Bortles effect. I think that's not a bad point.
I could see Josh Allen being the new garbage time king with a fair amount of interceptions every game, maybe 1 to 2, but a reliable touchdown or 2 because of the need to pass on that team to catch up. And inadvertently, and I know this isn't what we're talking about, I think that's going to affect LaShawn McCoy in a bad way. Despite him being a pass catching back.
They're going to stack the box against him.
Yes, they're going to stack the box, but that's something we can cover on another podcast another time. So, all right, I think that we've covered Josh Allen pretty well. I think that he's a high upside player. Definitely agree with Ben that he's probably going to be starting either week 1 or sometime this year, which is sad because I have AJ McCarron in our Dynasty League. So I'm really, really pulling for him to actually do something, but I don't actually believe it. So let's segue over to me. I'm going to be talking about my QB that's going to have an immediate impact, and that is Baker Mayfield. Now, this is a pretty obvious one, but I still feel like it makes the most sense to me. He was picked first overall, so that's a huge pedigree decision by a team that hasn't even picked first overall QB in a long, long time. His coach in college believed that he possibly had the most on-field responsibility of any QB last season, so that's huge. It means that they can trust him with pretty much any aspect of the game that a QB should be in charge of, and that's going to translate well to the NFL, where he'll have a lot of responsibility again. He's a competent veteran player. I think he's 24, which is, I mean, obviously age is bad for Dynasty. We want them to come in young, but he has years and years of experience of playing at an extremely elite level. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, which obviously is a huge win every time. And he's just a guy who exudes, I guess, a winning personality and a cockiness that can translate well to the NFL, because you want your players to think they're the best. You want them to exude that level of confidence, and I don't think he does it in an obnoxious way or an aggressive way that would cause a problem with teammates. And the only cons I can see offhand are that he's short, and short is a relative term because Russell Wilson is technically short, and I'm going to keep falling back to him apparently, but he's elite. And Drew Brees is technically short, and he's elite, so it's not like people can't overcome that, and he certainly has the draft pedigree and talent to do that. And the only other one I can see is that he plays for the Browns, who are admittedly an awful team and have been for the entirety of the time that I've followed football. So hopefully they turn it around this year. I think they finally have the talent surrounding him. They have Landry, Gordon, David Njoku, who's, I mean, a second-year player, but he showed some real promise, and he was a first-round pick at tight end. So they have a lot of talent around him in the passing game. And they even have Duke Johnson, who's maybe one of my favorite passing backs in the NFL. So that's why I feel really well about Baker Mayfield having an immediate impact, along with the fact that I don't think that Tyrod Taylor starts the full year. I think that at some point he either gets injured because he's a running QB who constantly puts himself in danger, and Mayfield takes over and runs with it and basically shows us why he was the first overall pick, or they just switch to him because the Browns are a historically awful team and they need to change it up.
Okay, so I have two problems with Baker Mayfield as an instant impact player. I mean, like you said, Tyrod Taylor starting in front of him. He is the most skilled, or, you know, I guess relevant QB starting in front of a rookie QB, in my opinion. You know, he is a running quarterback, so he does have the chance to be injured, but he has the skills to protect the ball and keep them in games with his legs, much like your Russell Wilson.
I don't know that player.
Beyond that, I mean, just having Hugh Jackson as a coach, I don't think he's that good at working with QBs. I mean, you know, looking into his past, Andy Dalton's turned out okay. I'm not sure if Hugh had such a big impact on that. But just last year with the rookie QB with Deshaun Kaiser, who was the second coming of Brett Favre and the new Packers backup QB, he did not much. He really didn't do anything at all. I mean, he went 0-16, should have jumped in the lake in January, didn't because of his heart.
Okay, the reality of the fact is that I agree with all those points. I don't think Hugh is a great coach, but I do think that Hugh is gone after this year. The reason they kept him on this long is not because they like him. It's because they've been firing head coaches for years now. And I think
but we're looking for instant impact players. So yes. If we're looking for instant impact, we're looking for this year, and he still has Hugh Jackson for this year, or at least the first 10 games.
Very good point. But I think he has both the talent and now the personnel around him that they didn't have last year to overcome that and potentially perform at a, I don't know, anywhere from, for Superflex especially, a level that you could play as your QB2, and maybe if it's a magical season, a QB1. So anyways, now that we've talked about our three different QBs, we're going to move on to running backs. So as far as running backs goes, we're going to go in the same order again. Jim, you're going to start the lead. So what player at running back do you feel in this draft is going to have an immediate impact for fantasy teams in a way that makes it worth picking them up?
Okay, so again, this is outside Saquon Barkley. We're just going to ignore him because, you know, he is the best. We'd all agree. I chose Ronald Jones II, and I'll just kind of compare him to other immediate impact running backs. He has a better offensive line and tight end than Penny, which I know Murphy, as the Seahawks partial homer, will jump on. He has a more stable offense than Geis and Freeman. You know, it's just, you know, they're solidified in their roles. You have Mike Evans, you have O.J. Howard, you have Cameron Brate. You know, the offense knows where they are, what they're doing at all points. There's less competition than Johnson and Michelle, and he still probably won't do third down work, and they might play from behind just because it's the Bucs, and they're in a pretty competitive division. But, you know, I see him making the most immediate impact. You know, he's not going to catch passes that much, but he will run between the tackles.
I want to jump in real quick because I just want to say I cheated a bit. This guy was my second guy. I agree with Jim. They just got rid of Doug Martin. That's huge. They only have Barber and Jaquiz Rogers, so I don't know like how much longer. Those. I think he can jump both of them pretty quickly.
Yes.
The problem is though too is you listed everybody else on offense except for one guy, and that's Jameis Winston. If that dude keeps turning the ball over, it doesn't matter how good Ronald Jones is. You can't put it in his hands if it's in the defense's hands.
That's true, and I do think he'll be better this year. He's still not going to be an elite quarterback. I just don't see that, off his season from last year. But I do see him improving off of last year, as well as Mike Evans, for that matter, so that should open up the offense.
It's worth noting that when Jameis Winston got over his shoulder injury at the very end of last year, he had an extremely productive stretch of games where he actually seemed to, I guess, take the step to the next level that he hadn't done prior to that in his first few years in the league. So these are things to think about, but I will say that Ronald Jones is one of my most polarizing players. I really thought about him a lot for this position because I think that he's not the clear, top 4 or 5 guy, but he's a favorite of a lot of fantasy players, and he's got a lot of history of performing at a high level in college. And I guess the big cons for me are that he's very small. I think he's sub 200. To be fair, he's young, so he can put on the weight. I think he's 20 right now. One of the youngest drafted running backs in the NFL by far. He's dynamic. He's quick. I think he's a great pick.
All right.
Great. So, Ben, you want to talk about your player?
Yep, my guy is the one I took second overall in our dynasty draft, so I'm kind of just wishing good luck on this guy. But I really do think he was the best available outside of Saquon Barkley, so I picked him second. So my guy is Darius Geis from Washington, the Washington football team. I think he's going to get playing time quickly. You don't pick a guy that soon in a draft in the first round if you're happy with your running backs. I don't think they're happy with Samaje Perine. Second round, but still, I don't think they go. Yeah, but I don't think they go that high. He did fall. You're right. Second round. I don't think they go that high though if they were happy with Perine or Rob Kelly. I just don't think that they're the favorites of the coaches there. I do think he's still going to get some passing work, just not on third downs. The coaches have already come out and said he's going to be on first and second down mainly. But and Chris Thompson's still there. You can't take that away. But Alex Smith is check down king. He's going to be open. They're not going to shy away from that on first and second down. Hopefully they don't fall in a hole that Kareem Hunt did. But I think Darius Geis can be out there week 1 doing his thing.
Now, I completely agree. And I do also know that Alex Smith is the check down king. But he did seem to have like a Alex Renaissance sort of thing happen last year where he finally figured out how to throw a deep ball, which was amazing. He hit Tyreek Hill. I think he was the most efficient receiver in the league last year at like 130 QBR rating, something along those lines. And he really had a connection on the deep shot with a number of players on the team. I'm wondering if that translates to this year and if they become a more dynamic, flexible offense. Not to say that Kirk Cousins wasn't an excellent QB as well, but if Alex Smith really has made this transformation that it seemed like he did last year in Kansas City, there's a really good chance the Redskins were going to be a vertical down field team. So I think it really just comes down to what we see in preseason for Alex Smith as to whether or not the bruiser role and the heavy running game is going to be the main focus of that team. Because I know that's typically what Jay Gruden likes to do, but he's struggled with it in recent years. So it's going to be interesting. But I do think that Geis is probably the best pure runner in the NFL this draft season. So I'm definitely rooting for him. I think he's got a real shot at being one of the big impact players right away.
I mean, my issue with it is that Alex Smith, I'm just not sure if he was a product of Andy Reid. He really didn't do a whole hell of a lot with San Fran when he was on them, and really attribute a lot of his success in Kansas City to Reid. So I don't know how he'll do with another new coach. And I really don't see their wide receivers as being that great. I mean, certainly he had better ones in KC with Kelsey and Hill.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how much defenses will be able to key in on the running back. They might be able to stack the box. I'm just not sure. It's just an offense in flux.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also in the agreement that they're probably going to stack the box against the running back. Dare Alex Smith the pass to Josh Doxson, who has not done much in the NFL, despite being a first-round pick a few years back. And I can't even name the other wide receivers on that team that are going to be starting because I don't think we know yet. But
I have one, and I have completely forgotten his name.
Okay, well I think that says it all right now. But I do think that Guis is one of the best pure runners to come into the NFL in a long, long time. So as a two-down back, I think he could have an immediate impact, maybe be an RB2, RB3. What do you think, Ben? Where are you pegging him as a starter?
I would guess more an RB2, kind of with the problems you guys are saying too. I don't know how good the offensive line there is either, but I mean, there's just enough weapons around him. I actually think their receiving core is better than that too. I don't necessarily think it's as poor as you guys are saying it is. It was okay last year, and I also just want to say too, I wasn't trying to take away from Alex Smith. That dude can sling it when he wants to. So we'll see if that really was, a product of him being under Andy Reid, checking it down, or if that's what they're going to want to do. So I'm going to say more an RB2. Again, Chris Thompson's going to take away a lot. That dude is talented. If he comes back healthy, you can't write him out, and that's going to lower, his value. But we'll see. I think RB2.
Yeah, and I think we'll see which of the two-faced version of Alex Smith that we get. It's going to be interesting. I think preseason will give away a lot of what that is, because I know last year Alex Smith destroyed in preseason, hitting deep targets, and that's what kind of, I guess, gave me a hint that there was something different there in Kansas City. So it's something to take a good look at during the preseason. My running back that I think will have an immediate impact is Rashad Penny. He's
shocker.
I know, it's a shocker. It's a shocker. But there's a reason why I traded down in our Dynasty Fantasy Football draft and traded away Tyreek Hill, who I love as a player. He's one of my favorite players. As a person, I'm not a big fan, but as a player, he's amazing. Because I really, really wanted this guy. I think that it wasn't a fluke that he was drafted in the first round by the Seahawks. I think that he has no clear competition outside of Chris Carson, who I do not think will...
How dare you? Eddie Lacy is on that team.
Feast mode is great.
Is he actually still on that team?
Yeah, I actually know. Do some research, Jim. Get back to us. But I have no idea if he's on the team anymore, but I don't think Feast mode is going to be a major obstacle for Rashad Penny. They're clearly huge fans of this guy. I follow the Seahawks subreddit. I know that everyone's all about it. The coaches are really, really excited to have him on the team. He has no clear competition, as I said before. I don't think Chris Carson's going to push him back down. I think, if anything, maybe he'll lose some third downs or at least out of the gate, to a couple of the pass-catching backs on the team who might make a bigger impact right there at the immediate start. I think that he's not the best, pass protector, so maybe he's not the one we want or they want on the field when Russell Wilson is going to be taking his time and bombing it downfield. But I think that he's a guy who's a good shot for 200-plus touches. He's probably going to be a three-down back most games. And he was a much, much better inside runner than Saquon Barkley in college. And he has an excellent pass-catching chops as well to go along with that. I think that Russell Wilson, as a running QB, is going to be huge for him, because it's going to make the defense's second guess, it's going to make them play honest, and it's going to potentially help him overcome what is a very bad O-line in the Seahawks backfield. So I think that if he can do that, which he certainly has the talent and the draft pedigree backing him up, saying that he can, that he has a good shot of being a low-end RB2 year one, and potentially a lot more down the road once they improve their O-line.
Okay, so I have 3 problems with Penny right off the bat, and I mean, I'm not saying he's not a great player, because Murphy will kill me.
Maybe.
First and foremost, I mean, like you said, their offensive line is terrible. At least it has been in years past. We have yet to see their new offensive line, but I really don't think it will be that much improved. And they lost offensive playmakers. I really don't see them being as powerful offensively as they have been in years past, which means they can stack the box, force Russell Wilson to throw to Doug Baldwin and nobody else, because they have really nobody else. Their defense is also completely revamped, so I don't think they're really going to have the Legion of Boom anymore, which means they could be playing from behind, and that would mean more throwing instead of being able to run with the running back despite Pete Carroll wanting to.
I think that's a really, really good point, and I think it also kind of plays into why he's so valuable. He has proven that he's a talented pass-catching back in the college football league. He has time and time again proven that, and I think that that's where he's going to be really valuable when they're under pressure, is that Russell Wilson's going to look for him or Doug Baldwin. He's going to potentially be the second option. Maybe, maybe not, because Tyler Lockett is more talented than I think people are giving him credit for. I think he might emerge as an excellent deep threat to stretch the field. But I do think that there is more of an offense that people are giving them credit for. I also think that, yes, there is going to be a focus on their couple of key playmakers, and that Rashad Penny will have to overcome that in his first year. But I think that volume and talent are going to the situation in this case. I think
Oh.
we've covered running backs for long enough.
Well,
I don't know.
just real quick,
Yep.
Eddie Lacy is a free agent.
He's a
you
free agent.
Just so
Goodbye.
you know, he is not competing with Penny this year.
Yes.
Because
Just
Penny
wanted
would
to
lose.
jump in. Just want to jump in quick
Yes.
with Penny. I agree kind of with the offensive line being the issue, and I don't think this is the Seahawks team that won the Super Bowl. We're talking about the Seahawks team that maybe backed into the playoffs at 7-9, and this dude isn't Marshawn Lynch. So we'll see. I definitely can see him performing, but again, he's one of few weapons on a team that is not going to be as good as we remember it being.
Completely agree. I think you're both wrong, but that's my opinion. And go Seahawks. Anyways, so we're going to move on. But first of all, I think we just want to give like a memorial to Eddie Lacy. He's gone on to eat at greener pastures. I hope that he gets picked up by another team where he can run for 40 yards again. So now we're going to cover wide receivers. Let's mix it up and let Ben lead the front on this one.
Ooh.
So Ben, I know, right? I'm crazy.
I'm ready.
Slow me down. But Ben, what wide receiver do you think from this rookie draft is going to make an immediate NFL impact?
This is a dude when we were actually looking at who I thought would be the immediate impact. I'm kind of upset I didn't target as high in the draft as I could. He just kind of didn't fit in a range where I'd be. And it's going to be Anthony Miller out of Chicago.
Hey.
This dude is really good. He knows how to get open. He knows how to catch footballs. They really need a wide receiver, too, in Chicago. Kevin White has been injured since they've drafted him. They let Cameron Meredith walk to New Orleans. So, this guy can step up, be the guy immediately. My one big concern, though, the Bears did not throw the football a lot at all last year. They threw it as a team a total of 470 times. That's not just Mitchell Trubisky there. That's the entire team. That was good enough for 21st overall as a quarterback. That's between Deshaun Kaiser and Jacoby Brissett. So that's not a lot of throws. They do have a new coach. We'll see what happens with that. Just to really why I kind of honed in on him too, watching one of the UCF games last year, my alma mater, all of our alma maters, UCF.
Hey.
When we're playing Memphis in the championship game. The dude went off for 14 receptions.
Memphis in the championship game.
We did beat him, but this dude lit us up for 14 receptions, 195 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
So I didn't even know this, but now I feel personally attacked.
Yeah,
That's
the
awful.
Dude's good, man. The dude's
Holy
good.
crap. Chicago clearly wants a player that's going to make an impact opposite Allen Robinson. And I think that Robinson is a great player, but I think he can't do it all on his own. And I think that Mitchell Trubisky is going to be looking at this guy often as the player that's only single covered, potentially by the cornerback 2 or 3. And I really think that this is an excellent pick because he's a great player. And there's a reason why he was drafted in the second round early. And it's because the Bears believe in him, and it's because he performed at a high level in college. So I think
really
this is
don't-
an excellent pick.
Yeah, and I like that you said Allen Robinson. I don't think Allen Robinson hurts his value. I actually think it only helps him. It's a great receiver in Chicago. It's a guy he can learn from, even if they don't necessarily play the same way.
They can learn to tear each other's ACLs together.
Exactly.
group
Yep,
effort.
that's it.
I'm a horrible
that's what it
human
needs to be.
All right, moving on.
Okay, no, we're not moving on.
No,
okay.
moving on.
First of all, no. Let me say why I hate this player.
Because he plays for the Bears.
Okay, that's point one.
Really?
Point one is he plays for the Bears. The Bears
Really?
are terrible. Everybody hates the Bears.
Reminder,
Nobody
Jim
likes
is a
them.
Packers
They are
fan,
the worst.
thus he hates the Bears.
All right, they're the second worst. I don't like the Vikings more.
Because they're better than you now.
It's murky.
Yeah, they are, though.
It's
No.
murky. We'll see how Kirk does. But okay, so like everybody's saying, they did not throw that much. They did add more weapons than just him and Allen Robinson. They took the best QB in the Super Bowl last year and took the tight end for the Eagles, who threw that amazing touchdown to Nick Foles. So I think he will actually be the number 2 receiver on that team because why wouldn't he be?
Honestly, why not?
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's May. Who cares?
Yeah, and who else? I can't name a single player
mean,
that should usurp him, honestly.
It is the Bears, so they will let you down because they're the Bears.
Just to quickly go on what you're saying, you talk about Trey Burton, tight end. He moved over to Chicago. We've seen teams that have had a tight end as their number 1 or 2 receiver. The Patriots among them. I'm not saying Bears are the Patriots, but there's definitely tight ends being in a much bigger role. That doesn't mean that this guy isn't going to get his, get his balls, be able to catch and play and do what he needs to. Yeah. I also think that we might see Mitch Trubisky let off the leash a little bit. Again, that 470 times is also with Jordan Howard as a running back. Like, you're going to let that guy run the football. They are down in a lot of games, even though they should be throwing. You're not going to put your rookie quarterback out there. We'll see what happens this year when they're slightly more.
Jim, you're up next.
Mine was going to be quick anyway. I picked Calvin Ridley as my immediate impact player. He is on the Falcons opposite Julio Jones. I really picked him because he has the best QB of the relevant rookie wide receivers. He also, he's opposite Julio Jones, so he's going to face the second cornerback, and he's in a pass-first offense. He's just ready to score points for you right off the bat.
I think that pretty much succinctly covers it. We know that he performed in college. He's a great player. He is not going to be double covered. Julio Jones is a monster. We can all agree. He's not a red zone monster, but he's certainly a reception monster. And I think that's going to make Calvin Ridley extremely valuable right out of the gate. I do, however, think that there are a lot of passing options in that team at the running back position that will absorb a lot of the passes that might go to a wide receiver too. I think Mohamed Sanu last year, who wasn't bad, but wasn't great. He was just a guy you could maybe play in flex in a pinch. And that's how I feel Anthony Miller will be this year. So
just to quickly add there, too, I think Atlanta is always going to have a high-powered offense. It's just how that team plays, no matter how good or bad their defense is. We might not get Super Bowl Falcons, but they're going to be the Falcons. They're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to throw the ball a lot with Matt Ryan.
Couldn't agree more. All right, so my player is Malcolm, oh my God. Malcolm Gallup. That is not his name. Michael Gallup.
There it is.
There
All right, so let's just pretend.
Got it.
All right, so when I record this or when I edit this later, it's gonna be a horse whinnying noise because of Gallup. All right, we're gonna keep that. Fuck it, we're keeping that. All right, so Michael motherfucking Gallup. Dallas needed a big-bodied wide receiver. That's how their offense runs. Des Bryant was that guy before. He had started to decline in a big way after his injuries a few years ago. Last year, he was a shadow of himself, in my opinion at least, along with getting injured. I think that Gallup comes in as a young player who has shown the ability to high point balls up in the air, to play physical with cornerbacks, and fills the Des Bryant role admirably. Maybe not at the same level Des Bryant did when he was a freshman out of college playing in the NFL, but maybe at a level that can make a real difference for fantasy teams that are looking to pick somebody up as a wide receiver 3 or 2. He's good at winning contested catches, as I already said, and he might be featured in the passing game because, let's be honest, that team does not have much in the way of passing players. One of their wide receivers just got injured. I wish I could remember names better, but the name's not coming to me.
Terrence Williams, I think he was actually arrested, wasn't he?
He didn't get injured. Yeah, he got arrested.
Hey, there we go. All right.
So we'll see. That's all pending too by the beginning of the season. That might or might not change. You gotta wait too.
Okay, so we're in flux there, but there's an opening there. Alan Hearns is the other guy who's the next man up. He's a great player in my opinion. He did very well in Jacksonville for a few years there. Kind of fell off a cliff when there was a lot of talent on the team to share the wealth. But I do think he'll be a great slot receiver, and potentially more if they make him do other things. But they do need that big-bodied guy. They need somebody who can make the contested catches in the end zone, who can go downfield and body out the smaller cornerbacks. And I think that guy is going to be Michael Gallup right away. And I think that as a result of that, he is a great buy low with quotation marks in the late second round of a rookie draft in a 12-team. Maybe mid-second round if you're worried about somebody snatching him up early. So what are your guys' thoughts?
Pros on him is Jason Witten retires. That's a big share of targets. Even if he was kind of declining a little later, he's always going to catch balls. One guy you didn't mention, Cole Beasley's still there. He always likes to just steal some things and be fantasy irrelevant, but still mess with people too.
Yes.
Problem with two problems against him are the other guys on offense for him. What kind of Dak Prescott are we going to get? If it's going to be rookie Dak Prescott or last year Dak Prescott. Second thing, too, first, second, and third options on that team are all Ezekiel Elliott. They are run first, they will run second, and they may run third. That is just their team. So they do need a big body receiver. I love that analysis on it, but we got to see if they're going to just run the ball 30 times a game, or they got to, let Dak throw.
I'm a believer in Dak. Oh, you can go, Jim.
No, okay, so I hate Dak Prescott. All right, he lost me the championship last year. You lost me the championship
last year by having
Dak lost me the championship. Dak Prescott is just a horrible human being who lost me the championship.
That's clearly what happened.
That is exactly what happened. But but he just looked bad. When they stacked the box against Zeke, which they are going to do because they do not have any bona fide wide receivers, nothing proven.
Cole Beasley says otherwise.
Cole Beasley is irrelevant. He'll get maybe.
I didn't say I agreed with him. I
didn't
say I agreed with him. Just he says otherwise.
Well, screw him.
I agree, though. He's irrelevant.
They're going to stack the box. They absolutely will stack the box. Their offensive line is not as good as they used to be. So when Dak is inevitably forced to throw, it will not be as pretty as it was his rookie year because he doesn't have the pedigreed wide receiver and tight end. He's just.
He doesn't have Des Bryant. He doesn't have Des Bryant.
He doesn't have Des Bryant. And he doesn't have as good of an offensive line as he did his rookie year.
Three words.
It's just worse overall. There's nobody else to throw to. Sorry, Cole. It's just not going to go well.
All right, well, I have 3 words for you, and that's Book of Ezekiel. That dude is amazing, and he has been having the box stacked against him since he started as a rookie, and he still is a phenomenal player that makes an impact regardless. And I think that is what's going to make Dak valuable, and that is what is going to make Michael Gallup valuable, because they're going to stack the box against Zeke because they know that he's the most dangerous player on that team, and that's going to give Dak the ability to pick players off one-on-one, find one-on-one coverage and hit somebody open. And I do believe in Dak once Zeke's around. If Zeke gets injured, my belief in Michael Gallup and my belief in Dak Prescott, disappears on the wind. Like imagine like ashes flying away.
Okay, yeah, look.
That's how I feel about him.
Great, and they are going to stack 11 men in the box because they can, and Dak is still going to fuck it up.
All right, so you're biased, but I think that we can all agree that there is upside there and potentially a worthy pickup. Okay, so tight ends. Let's start with Jim. Jim, what tight end do you feel will have an immediate impact? Let's make it succinct because we got to move on to the long-term pickups.
Okay, you guys will actually like this. I did pick Mike Gesicki.
Hey, 2 of us.
You're both Dolphins fans, so you're going to be
3 of us. I think we all kind of went.
So we will comprehensively. Let's take a second. We will comprehensively cover Mike Gesicki. Jim, you go first, and then we'll fill in afterwards.
All right, he is a pass-catching tight end. He is not going to be a blocker. He will be in the outfield looking for the ball. Tannehill may not be the best, but he's better than Flacco, which, they took 2 tight ends in the draft. He's on a team that I believe will play from behind that may be, outvoted in present company, but I don't think the Dolphins' offense will be that great. So I do think they will be playing from behind, so they'll have to throw more often. He's on a more stable offense, I believe, than the Texans as far as their new rookie tight end. Just because Deshaun Watson, he played, 6 games. I just don't believe in it yet. He looked great. He looked amazing. Nuck is great, but Gesicki just is in a better, more stable situation. My only issue with him is the way he holds the ball is awful. He's going to lose some balls. He's going to fumble a couple times.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that about the way he held the ball.
It's always with one hand, and it's always loose.
Hey, keeping it loose. So, Ben, how do you feel about him?
My biggest thing is, besides being a Dolphins fan, I'm rooting for this dude. But the Dolphins have been trying to look for somebody like Gronk, and this looks like the dude. He's big. He gets open. He's played this position before. Jim said it. He doesn't block. He just catches passes. And I have a little more faith in Tannehill. If he stays healthy, he's a very serviceable, decent quarterback that can get a team to the playoffs. Not saying the Dolphins do, but that guy can manage a football game. And throwing to his tight end is key to that. He loves to check out to the tight end. And the running backs, having a guy like this, he's going to catch a ton of balls.
Lots of balls will be caught. I agree. All right, so I don't have many points to go along with that, other than that I do really believe in Mike Gesicki. I think that it's a combination of pretty much freakish physical ability. The dude is a spark score monster. He scored in the 97th percentile for tight ends ever. So that's anybody at the rookie combine coming in. He is in the 97th percentile of potential. So I think that alone is a big indicator. I mean, obviously it doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL, but it's a start. And Miami doesn't have a true target monster. We used to have Jarvis Landry. That guy would get a ludicrous number of targets every year.
Will play great for you guys for 3 games until he's injured.
And that's okay because we have Albert Wilson to back that up. And Wilson is an underrated prospect as well, but we can cover that some other time when we have
that's later.
sleeper picks. So let's just move on from that. But there's no target monster in Miami anymore.
There is now.
Who's that?
Mike Gesicki.
Hey!
Let's go. Let's go.
Anyways, Mike Gesicki, spark score monster, great opportunity. Miami needs a pass catcher to make an impact. My player comp for him is Jimmy Graham, a guy who can't block particularly well, but came out of college with all the physical skill sets and the height
to play basketball.
Did you know Jimmy Graham plays basketball?
Did you know Mike Gesicki played basketball? Because that's all they talked about during the draft. I swear to God, yes.
See, I didn't even know that, and I was already comping him to Jimmy Graham. Now he is Jimmy Graham. They're cloning into each other. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the best long-term pickups from the draft. So these are players that a year plus from now are going to really shine for your fantasy football teams and make a big impact in their actual NFL teams. So we're going to discuss a QB, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, just like we discussed for the immediate impact players earlier. So I'll start off, first of all, talking about QB. So I think Lamar Jackson is our guy. Lamar Jackson is a huge risk pickup, but he's got sky-high, I'd even say Cam Newton light type potential with his dangerous running game ability. This guy This guy won the Heisman Trophy a few years ago. He has more rushing yards last season than Saquon Barkley, who went second overall in the NFL draft and is the top prospect at running back. And on top of that, he had a very respectable passing season as well. He's got a good offensive line when they're healthy over in Baltimore. Potentially solid pass catching group. They're really, really actively trying to add in some veterans that matter. And I think that long term it's going to pan out for them because they know they need to do something. And they added in 2 new exciting tight ends. One was a first round pick. I believe that's Hayden Hurst this year. And honestly, I think that there's just a ton of upside. My cons for him are that he did not do well on the football IQ test, the name of which eludes me right now. If anyone can help me out.
Oh, Wonderlic test.
Thank you, Ben. Wonderlic test. On top of that, he has a wobbly deep throw, which is going to cause problems for his receivers. And I just don't think he's polished enough yet. But we're looking for long-term potential. And I think that in a year or so, understudying over in Baltimore and learning from the head coaches and learning from just everyone over in that system.
Flacco.
No, I don't want him to learn from Joe Flacco, to clarify. No interest. Joe Flacco is not a guy you want to learn from.
Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback with a Super Bowl ring. Elite.
So that's how I feel about him. I think that he has massive upside, and I think that he has the massive downside of being irrelevant in 2 years. So what do you guys think?
I just don't think he has threats around him. He doesn't have any wide receivers. Ozzie Newsome, their GM, has not been able to draft wide receivers and has only been able to, acquire aging ones at that, and not great ones. I mean, Steve Smith was their last relevant one. Mike Wallace has been okay, but, even he's not great. Their new tight ends are tight ends. That's the hardest position to learn. So I really don't see him being a prolific passer. He doesn't want to look for the pass first. He wants to run first. Which can work for a bit. I just don't see him being relevant in the league long term.
I think those are good points. I do think that they're going to improve at wide receiver, and they know it. I think that at tight end they've done everything they can now, and now it's just a few years of development to see which of their 2 high draft pick tight ends pan out. And yeah, I do agree. There's a massive amount of risk with him. What about you, Ben?
This guy was a stud in college. He won the Heisman. It's hard to write all that off. Louisville was a great team with him. I remember watching him play UCF a few times too, and just watching the things he can do. You said it. He can run. He has legs. He rushed for more than Saquon Barkley. That's crazy. I really like his skill set. On the other side, though, he is not going to start right away. That's why he's more of a long-term player. I think that does help him, but who knows? Also, we've seen dudes like this fizzle out. RG3 was the biggest thing since sliced bread week, his first week out, and isn't even, he's in Baltimore. He's with, Lamar Jackson now.
He's the backup to the backup.
Which might actually help Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, so you never know. He can see what not to do, maybe, but we'll see. I had him on my list too. He was one of the guys I would like to have talked about here, so I'm really glad you did it. I think he could be the real deal. We'll see what happens.
Great. All right, Ben, you're up now. What is your QB of the future, long term, from the rookie?
All right, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time here because we already talked about him, but my dude is Baker Mayfield.
Hey.
You don't pick a guy first overall if he can't be great. Cleveland hasn't picked a guy first overall in a while, so they must have seen something here. Problems with him is he's small. We said that already, but he's not. I don't know that he'll start right away, but he could be starting pretty quick. And Tyrod's not a bad dude to learn from. Accuracy issues aside, Tyrod's been starting the NFL on some bad teams and made them look a little better.
Yeah, he knows how to protect the ball. He knows how to avoid interceptions. It's a good person to learn from, and I completely agree. How about you, Jim?
I also picked Baker Mayfield. I really think they're building the team correctly. As long as Mayfield is the one that pans out. Of course, they missed on Wentz and Goff, but the team is built very strong on offense right now. The defense is picking up too. It's the Browns. That's the only downside I have.
It is the Browns.
It's a big downside.
Can't write that off.
All right, great. So let's now that we know that everyone has picked either Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson, let's move on to running backs that will have a long-term impact for your team. So I'm going to let Jim kick this off. Jim, who is your running back of the future?
So actually, sticking with the Browns, I did pick Nick Chubb. Much like Mayfield, the team is just being built, I think, in a pretty great way right now. They've upped offensive line. They've upped their receivers, so the box isn't always going to be stacked against the running backs. I believe in Baker Mayfield, so I think he can open up some space for Chubb in the years to come. I just think this year there's too many mouths to feed. But the defense will keep the score down, so they'll be able to run, and it's just a good situation long term.
My big concern with him is his knee injury. He had a catastrophic knee injury in college, but he bounced back, and he's played at a high level since. I don't think that there's necessarily a risk of re-injury other than just if he injures that knee again, that could be a season ender or potentially career ender.
It could be. The counterpoint is Frank Gore.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Frank Gore, both knees were destroyed. For people who don't know the history of Frank Gore in college, and then he came into the NFL, and he is now immortal. I believe he's a vampire. We don't really know. And he's still playing to this day. Very possible. But, Ben, how do you feel about it?
He was actually a guy I had on my list to talk about here, too, which I just think it's really weird. We're talking about a team that had one win in the last 2 years, but, they have drafted for the long term. They really have. They've built the team around these two guys. We didn't talk about Nick Chubb earlier because I don't see him playing this year. If Carlos Hyde's healthy, he's going to play. They have Duke Johnson. There's a lot of guys he got to jump. But you don't draft a guy like Nick Chubb, who was dominant in college. He is going to be a workhorse if he stays healthy and once he gets his time to shine.
Completely agree. All right. So speaking of Ben, would you like to talk about your player for running back?
I'm gonna swoop in here because I know you're gonna talk about him right away. I'm gonna talk about Rashad Penny. I really don't like him out of the gate. Kind of what I disagreed on you earlier. Their O-line is just terrible. But again, it's a guy they took early. He has a franchise QB who is young, and they'll build that lineup. They'll build that defense back up, and Rashad Penny's going to be doing some things for years to come.
Jim?
I do like him longer term. They need to build the offensive line, though. They need to add some receivers to give Penny, room to run. It's just this year I really don't like him. But the Seahawks have proven in the past that they can build a team that can compete, and they've been able to compete running first. So, if they can do that again, Penny could be amazing. He could be the next Marshawn Lynch, who I absolutely love. It's just I don't see it this year.
I think those are all respectable. I think that Penny comes in and kills it right away, and I think that long term I also agree with you guys. So I think we're all in agreement. I just also agree even harder than you guys. And I think that he'll make a real difference early game. But moving forward to my player, I chose at running back as the player to make an impact long term, Ito Smith. I initially thought of Chubb, and I'm glad I didn't pick him because Ben chose him. But
Nope.
Ito Smith
And Jim.
And Jim, yeah, that's a good point. I chose Ito Smith because the long-term value he presents as a super late draft pick is incredibly valuable. Because he's a player that you can get right at the very end of a rookie draft and could make a really large impact for your team in like a year or two. He was prolific in college. I use Saquon Barkley as the gold standard, so sorry that I keep using him in all my comparisons, but he had more rushing and receiving yards than Barkley last year. Or sorry, over his entire career in college. It was a much less competitive division, and that's a big difference maker. Barkley did that at a higher level, but that says something, I think, about the player, that he performed at a level that is considered extraordinary, regardless of the division he was in. He has a really cool nickname, which is the Judge. That's pretty badass. I don't know. It's not important, but something I know.
It definitely will apply to his long-term status for sure.
Come on.
Is going to be the
good,
Judge.
If he's good,
as long as only if the people say he drops the gavel instead of the hammer or something, that's a good one.
Agreed. So Tevin Coleman is not long for Atlanta. I think he's going to be signed somewhere else next year. To clarify, Ito Smith was signed in Atlanta. I think that he's the heir apparent to Tevin Coleman, who is the change of pace / backup to Devonta Freeman, which is an incredibly valuable role. In the last few years, he has performed at a low-end RB2 level, and that's behind the starting running back. I think that very, very soon, Tevin Coleman will be signed somewhere else, whether it's as a starter next year.
This is the last year under contract because I have Tevin Coleman, and I have been watching closely.
Good. Thank you, Jim. So Tevin Coleman is not long for Atlanta. He's going to slot in, I hope, right where Tevin Coleman started off. He's a great pass catcher, and I think his cons are basically just that he's 5'9" and 200 pounds. He's not a big dude, but he can bulk up. There's still the possibility there for him to become a 3-down back one day. I just don't think it's in the cards. But I think he's a guy who might be an RB2 down the road. So that's where I stand on him.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I mean, like you said, Tevin Coleman's not going to be there much longer. With his frame, I see him more as a pass-catching threat, which they've used Tevin Coleman as to much success. So that could absolutely work out. He just has a lot of obstacles immediately to get through.
Yes, he's a year plus down the road type of guy, I think.
Yeah, Atlanta kind of has their backfield figured out. It's kind of hard to just talk about them in terms of like what they're going to do. One thing you had with career stats, though, I do want to mention. We're talking about a 4-year player here with Ito Smith. Saquon Barkley left in his junior year, so he's leaving a whole season on the table. He plays in the Big Ten. It's hard to compare those two guys together. They're not really the same player. I get where you're trying to go. The guy can run the football. It's not like Southern Miss has been a competitive team, and the fact that they gave him faith in college to do it. We're talking about, too, he had over 1,400 receiving yards too from the running back position. Atlanta likes to throw the football to the running back, so I think you hit the nail on the head with those two.
Great. All right, and that's a really good point I didn't realize. So I had no idea that they played a different number of years in college. So that's a good thing to take into account. I think that
we are amateurs.
We are very much so amateurs, but our combined knowledge is all right. So let's move on to.
Decent.
It is acceptable. So let's
We're
move
good
on
enough
to
for a third place finish in your league.
You guys are gonna rock third place. Third place out of 3, to be fair. It's a very small league.
It might only be 3 people.
All right, so let's move on to wide receiver. I can go first this time. So I think that the wide receiver of the long-term future is Courtland Sutton, and I wouldn't be surprised if more people agree with me. But there's a point before the NFL draft where I was reading that Sutton was getting consideration as a top wide receiver prospect in the actual draft. He was a guy who was being considered number 1 overall. He checks all the boxes for size and physical skill set. He's got the pedigree from college, and then he was drafted in the early 2nd round by Denver. So they're not playing around. They want this player. He will almost certainly not be relevant this year, which is okay because that's not what we're talking about. Because Demaryius Thomas, or DT, and Emmanuel Sanders are on the team, and they're clearly the number 1 and 2, barring injury. So assuming they don't get injured for the season or get knocked out early, I do think that Sutton doesn't have value right away, but I think that he is a really talented and young player who's going to be the heir apparent to them. And if he's in on 3 wide receiver sets, I think he's going to keep the cornerbacks honest. He has the upside of being a top 15 wide receiver asset in 2 to 3 years, in my opinion. And as he develops and the competition around him develops, I think he could be a true wide receiver one day. So that's where I stand. Does anyone have any comments or concerns?
Yeah, my issue with him is they do not have a long-term quarterback figured out. I do not believe in Case Keenum. I think last year was a fluke. Also, fuck the Vikings. It's just, I don't really believe in their offense until they can put something together. They're not sure of their running back position. They're not sure of their QB situation. I think Emmanuel Sanders is gone after this year, and I don't know how much longer DT has, but I don't think he's ready for a wide receiver one position.
I would say I'm going to kind of disagree with every point there. I see him filling in that role pretty quick. I believe in Case Keenum. I think that's exactly what Denver needs. That defense is going to give up maybe 5 points a game. Like, it's just that good. I'm being a little facetious there. I'm thinking more to like 13 to 18 points a game. Case Keenum will get you that. He brought a very similar Minnesota team all the way back up there in this very same way. And I think Sutton actually can have an impact this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they have, I don't think he's going to be wide receiver, might be a wide receiver 4, but he's going to be a guy that's going to maybe track a little bit more this year and definitely in the long term.
I couldn't agree more. I think Keenum's underrated. I think that what he did in Minnesota was not a fluke. I think that St. Louis, or I guess now Los Angeles, LA,
Yep.
Thank you. Jeff Fisher is not a great coach. It's universally understood that he was not a great coach.
No.
I think he brought the worst out of his players, and I think that when Keenum was playing as a QB there, that's what happened. And I do really believe in him. I think that he takes the shots, and I think that with having DT and Sanders on the team, that the wide receivers are going to come down with the 50-50 balls. Jim, who is your wide receiver?
I went with a player that I actually drafted. So it is Christian Kirk. And I know his recent news has not been great.
Agreed.
On the bright side, it seems like Arizona knew that he's kind of an asshole before they drafted him, so they knew what they were getting. But for his long-term value, I see him with a QB, Josh Rosen, who should be relevant for the long term. I really do like Rosen in the long-term value. I just think he's a great pro-ready QB. Kirk gets to learn alongside Larry Fitzgerald while not taking the initial cornerback one right away. He gets to learn the position, learn from one of the best wide receivers to be in the league for the last decade or so at least. They have a strong run game to really give him some room to go. And they have a weakening defense that, unless they really reamp it, will allow or really force the Cardinals to have to throw.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more. I have no input. I think that's the case. I think Christian Kirk coming in with Josh Rosen is going to make an impact long term.
I think just the biggest thing is why we have him down here and not up top. You don't know who his QB is. I don't necessarily think Bradford hurts his value, but that could change things. I'm assuming Rosen's going to be the better thrower to him for more of his career, so I definitely see him long term. The offensive line's pretty bad in Arizona. It's not great, and if your quarterback's on his back, he's not throwing you the football.
Yeah,
that's a good point. What wide receiver do you have?
All right, so I'm going with the guy I drafted, a guy from UCF, and that's all that matters. Traquan Smith. Traded up to get this guy. I was really happy. I was able to snake a couple of our friends on him. I don't think he's going to be big out the gate. They got tons of mouths to feed in New Orleans. They just got Cameron Meredith. Michael Thomas is still there. Brandon Coleman's still there. But this guy is going to be good. He was great in college. He's big. He's a good deep threat. The dude only catches touchdowns. That's just what he does. How long does he have Drew Brees? That's going to be a problem, but we'll see.
That's my issue.
It means a lot lining up next to Michael Thomas, though, and that dude's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think we all agree. Drew Brees is not long for New Orleans. Maybe he's got 3 to 4 years left, but I doubt there's anything more than that.
They did not draft a replacement.
No, they did not.
But even if he has 2 or 3 years, that's enough time for them to get one. It's not impossible. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it eventually could be another high-profile QB that's on the market, but we don't know that he's going to have Drew Brees for more than a couple more years, but he is a great prospect.
The only issue there is Alvin Kamara. He will take the short intermediate routes. That's just the type of running back that he is. He's more of a pass-catching back, so he could take those routes.
Agreed.
Can't overlook Ted Ginn is still there too, and they kind of, even though they have different body styles, they play the same thing: get big, get deep, go fast, and that's so he has to get him again. I don't know how long Ted Ginn's going to be there. It's not like he's the youngest wide receiver they have, but another guy he has to beat out. I don't think he's going to be a factor right away, but he'll be there.
So starting at tight end, Ben, you want to go a doubleheader and do your tight end of the future?
I do, because I love themes in this category, and I'm going with another night here. We're going with Jordan Atkins in Houston. I love this guy.
I thought I was original.
From you too. Nope. I drafted him too, man. How are you gonna think you're original? I don't
know. I thought I was being creative. Anyways, you got the floor.
He was another target monster at UCF, just soaking up targets. A good pass catching back. Houston's offense only got better as long as Deshaun Watson's healthy. They are going to be great.
We're not sure yet.
That's true, but well, I mean, he had a good streak. Again, that could have been a streak, but a guy like Jordan Atkins is going to be a weapon for him. Even Tom Savage has to throw the ball to somebody, and it's going to be a tight end probably before a receiver. Is he even still there? Is he even still alive?
You know what?
That's
what happened to him.
I think what you just said is Savage, but yes, he is still alive.
Wow, he made it to the first punt of the night. That's great.
I mean, it's good for me. I waited. I bided my time. Great. Okay. So Jordan Atkins. All right. So we both feel the same way. I think that I was initially looking at Goddard as like the obvious pick, and then I realized that Ertz isn't a free agent until 2022. He signed a contract just a year or two ago, and it goes all the way until then. I think Ertz is a special talent. He showed it last year. Showed it years before, just never quite emerged before that. I think that Wentz is going to maximize him, and I don't think he's going anywhere. So as a result, I started to expand my search, and I found Jordan Atkins. He was drafted by the Houston Texans. They needed to fill an immediate need at tight end because they lost Ryan Griffin, who... Oh, no, sorry, not lost Ryan Griffin. They lost... I can't remember his name, but he had a concussion, and he was out last year. And he was there... Oh, CJ
Fedorowicz. Yeah, Fedorowicz.
Yes, thank you. CJ Fedorowicz was out last year due to concussion. He eventually retired due to concussions. It's a sad story, but the reality of the fact is they need a pass catcher. And I agree with all your points. I think that he's going to take a year or two to develop because tight end is a difficult position. And I think if he learns to block, he could eventually become a major impactor for that team because Deshaun Watson is special. Their receivers are special. If they add a special tight end, that offense could become unstoppable.
Their defense could also keep them in the game longer. They do have a good defense, so that may lead to a running-based offense, at least in the second half of the game, which could take away from him. Not that I'm sure it will.
Jim, you're up, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, go.
I did pick Goddard. Again, warning, I did pick him in the draft, so I do own him in Dynasty. They say it takes at least 3 years to learn tight end. At that point, Zach Ertz is going to be 30. And most tight ends' bodies do not live up to 30. It's just a very physical position. It just doesn't hold up that well. They have a strong defense and a pretty young defense to keep them relevant. I love their QB. I also have Carson Wentz in Dynasty. And I just think that he'll be relevant and amazing for the years to come. So I really think Goddard will do well in a few years once he learns the offense, learns how to play the position, and just really comes into his own while Ertz is on the downswing.
Completely agree. I think he's special, but I do think he's a long-term prospect. You might have to wait a very long time to get value out of him, but that's just my own very strong opinion. Okay.
I do want to add one thing for Goddard real quick. One big bonus point. He did play basketball in high school.
Oh, man. He's the best tight end.
So he's Jimmy Graham. All right, let's get to know. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to our next section, which is going to be ranking the top 5 rookie QBs by Dynasty Fantasy Value. So how we feel about the top 5 rookie QBs that were drafted this year and how they're going to make an impact right away and long term. We'll start off with Jim. What is your rankings from 1 to 5, 1 being top, 5 being bottom, for the top 5 QBs? And the list of top 5 QBs, assuming you're going to stay in this range, maybe not. I'll be surprised if you pick another QB. It's Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, and Josh Allen.
Okay, those are the 5 that I ranked. You're very welcome. Much like my long-term pickups, I do start with Baker Mayfield. I just think they built an amazing team around him so far, all signed to pretty long contracts, including the defense. You know, the defense will keep them in games. They have a pretty strong run game. You know, if either Carlos Hyde, Duke Johnson, or Chubb all stick around, I like it. He does have the skills. He just needs to learn how to sit in the pocket and take snaps under center. That's really his only issue. But he can scramble. He can run. The only thing I really want him to do is learn to slide. He runs so upright. If he takes one hit, I mean, he's looking at like a broken back. It's pretty bad. After him, I have Sam Darnold. The Jets are a dumpster fire. I do not like the Jets.
Oh, yeah.
You guys like them less, being Dolphins fans. But Darnold's special. He goes through all of his reads quickly and well. He can throw it anywhere in the field, you know, short, intermediate, long. He can learn behind Josh McCown for what that's worth. I'm not sure that's worth a tremendous amount, but Josh McCown has been a team player. He's probably going to start this year and get sacked often. And he does need to learn to play under center. But I think he's great as a long-term investment, just less than Mayfield. After that, I have Josh Rosen. I've already talked about him. He is the most pro-ready QB. I really like him. I like his supporting cast. Christian Kirk should do amazing for me. After that, I have Lamar Jackson.
For who, Jim?
For me.
There we go.
There it
Lamar
is.
Jackson is my 4th QB. He is just an athletic freak. He can run. He will look to run first. I do not like his supporting cast. I think the Ravens' offense is pretty terrible. But he can sit and learn behind Flacco this year. And he will have a defense that will make him play offensively for the years to come. And then last, of course, is Allen. He is just very inaccurate. He does have a lot of arm strength, and he scrambles pretty well, but he has terrible supporting cast, and he does not know how to play under center.
I think I'll go next. So my top QB is Baker Mayfield. There's nothing new to report here. We've talked about him plenty. The knocks are that he's short and he plays for the Browns, but outside of that, I think he has sky-high potential. I think his draft capital matters, and I think he's great. Lamar Jackson is my number 2, which is probably going to be an extreme contrast with most of you, or with both of you. I think he has the highest fantasy football ceiling of any of the rookie QBs, but he also has the lowest floor. He's a rusher. As Jim said, he's likely to rush before passing in a pressure situation. I think that if he can learn to control that and only rush when the opening is there and then focus on passing otherwise and then really polishing that long-term he will be a player that could reward you in a top 6 type level for at least a couple of years. But I do think he's also the type of guy who might not even matter 3 years from now. Josh Rosen, like Jim said, I think he's the most NFL-ready QB right away. I do not think he has the right situation around him, however, to make an impact. And I do think that Sam Bradford's going to keep him from starting right away. Sam Darnold is my number 4. I think he's just very young. He's 20 years old. He's got an obscene amount of talent, but he's on a team without a strong group of receivers. And I predict that he'll get Deshaun Kaisered, which is a verb I made up just now, where he's not ready to play
behind the best QB in NFL history?
You got it. So you're talking about who is the starting QB in Cleveland, Jim? Obviously, you're talking about that.
Cleveland?
Yeah, you're clearly talking about that, right? Not Aaron Rodgers. But anyways, I do think he might get Deshaun Kaisered, where they pull him, they shred him out on week 1. He doesn't have the cast to carry him through. He doesn't have the coaching to carry him through, and he loses confidence and falls fast. So that's my real concern with Sam Darnold. And also, he's got a case of fumbleitis. In college, he fumbled a ton. I do think that's going to continue to happen in the NFL if he's pressured. And then my number 5 is Josh Allen. I think that Josh Allen has a chance to be the top QB from this draft if he can fix his accuracy issues. I know we all talked about it already. He seems like the easiest rookie QB to gauge as a bust, but I think the upside is so high that if you really need a home run hit at QB and you're drafting, he's the type of guy you should really go out of your way to get. and that's where I stand for the top 5. Ben, you got your top 5 ready?
I do. So since we're talking about long-term value, again, Baker Mayfield has to go number 1 here. He's going to start pulling his dick all over the NFL very soon, just like he did at Oklahoma. So love that guy. Love his attitude. He's gonna do it in the NFL. Josh Rosen's my number 2. I really like where he landed in Arizona. He gets a great young running back. David Johnson's not that old, coming back off of a broken wrist, so hopefully he can come back. Decent young receivers. Yes, he has Larry Fitz, but, that's just going to help him for a little bit. He has some young guys like Christian Kirk. We'll see what happens, but the line needs to get better. Sam Darnold, I don't actually, as much as I have hate in my heart for the Jets being a Dolphins fan, they're getting better as much as it hurts me to say. Good landing spot, young receiving core. We got to see what the Jets do around him first. Number 4, Lamar Jackson. Again, this guy can either be, the next big thing or he's going to fizzle out. We got to see what happens. He's just not going to start right away. And my number 6, I went a completely different way for you, even though I put Josh Allen up earlier. He didn't even make my list. My number 5. Here is Mason Rudolph. I'm going to put him in there.
Whoa.
Again, yeah, the dude is not going to start right away. Big Ben likes to fake retirement every year. We'll see how much longer he does it, but they have an amazing offense. Antonio's getting up there. He's not going anywhere. We got Juju Smith-Schuster. He's hanging around. Maybe Le'Veon hangs around. Maybe if they see what Mason Rudolph does, they finally pay the man. But I think that dude's going to do better than Josh Allen in the long term.
Honestly, I really, really like that. I think that he's going to inherit an amazing offense, especially if Ben retires after this year. And yeah, his opportunity is sky high, and we know he can play. Completely agree. So now that we've covered our top 5 QBs each, and I think the universal consensus is that Baker Mayfield is special, and he's going to make a difference. So if you can, and if you have the ability to wait, pick up Baker Mayfield on your team in your rookie draft and hold him.
I did.
Hey, and I'm jealous about it, but we don't need to talk about that right now.
I think we could.
I have Rodgers and Wentz.
We can talk about it for a long time, or we can ignore it and repress it, like I'll do. So, moving on, we have the under-the-radar veterans to trade for. This is our last section. We're going to talk about veterans who are already in the NFL that we think are really, really worth it at the perceived price they're at right now to trade for. So if you need a player,
this is dynasty.
Thank you.
I'm glad you
Jim.
specified veterans in the NFL as opposed to like military veterans. We are talking about fantasy football here. It's good you reminded people.
I really like that Ulysses S. Grant guy.
Grant looks great.
He may be president after being general for a while.
They might even put him on money.
That's just bona fide.
Well, Rashad's already on the penny, so just saying.
God.
You guys love it. You take it back. All right. Well, anyways, so talking about
that's as bad as his offensive line this year.
Well, I have literally no argument to contest that. So, under the radar veterans to trade for, players in the NFL, players that we think are valuable at their price. So, we're going to each pick one to talk about. It doesn't matter about position, and I would like Ben to start. Ben, who is your under-the-radar veteran to trade for?
This hurts me because I literally just traded this guy, and then we started looking at this, and I made a big mistake. My dude is T.Y. Hilton. I think he had an off year. He's just old enough to kind of be considered a veteran. He's been here for a little bit, but the dude has so much talent. And if Andrew Luck comes back, this dude's going to be a wide receiver 1, maybe fringe, very top end wide receiver 2. This guy's going to be really good. I think you can get him for cheap. I kind of took a decent amount back. I probably could have got more if I really shopped him around, to be honest with you. But I think T.Y. Hilton's a guy you should go after now. He's 25, years old. So
I had no idea he was 25. I just blindly assumed he was at least 28. So that's mind blowing to me that he's still that young. And yeah, I think that's amazing. He's a great player when Luck is around. Recently, he was a wide receiver 1. There's been about a year and a half without Luck, and I know that sucks. And as a result, is it 2 years now? I could be wrong about that. But anyways, he has not performed at the same level, but he clearly still has a skill. It's just a matter of having the QB in the situation there and I really do think he could be wide receiver 1. So I agree.
Real quick, my bad. He is 28, but I mean, for a receiver, that's a position that's going to play a lot longer. He doesn't have that injury risk. He plays like he's 25. Maybe that's what I was thinking of there. I'm going to save myself real quick, but he is 28, so he is a little older than I thought. But even still, he's around the Julio Jones's age and stuff like that.
Yes,
he's definitely on the younger side for dynasty rankings.
I mean, 28 is prime for a wide receiver. So
right.
28, 29, 30, those are their golden years. So Jim, who is your player who's under the radar that you can pick up?
So actually, you may be surprised in going with Ben's latest comment. I actually did pick Julio Jones.
Whoa.
To be my veteran selection. His age is going to put some people off. He's 29, close to 30. That tends to be where people start getting, I only have a few years left with this player type thing. So that should make it easier to trade for him. Last year, he had the yards. He only had 3 touchdowns. So he's due for, touchdown, not regression.
Positive regression is the term.
Right. He should get more. And, his QB just got a fat new contract. So, he's signed with Matt Ryan for a while. So he's not, going to have a different QB or anything like that. He finally has a good, second wide receiver on the team, Calvin Ridley, to take some pressure off, really make it a little bit easier for him. It's also his second year with Sarkisian. He's learning the offense a bit better. He plays in the Dome. Weather won't be an issue for 8 games of the year at least.
Well, nine games 9. They play the Saints.
With the Saints.
Nice stat tracking, Ben. Holy crap.
And people are finally starting to attribute him with what I call the fancy Deshaun Jackson label, where, some games he will get you 2 to 3 points, and one game a year he will get you 60, 70 points whenever he's playing against me.
I won a week that week with that dude. That was fun.
And it's always against me. It's terrible.
Yeah, it was fun.
I just want to take a second.
That seems to pad his stats, which people are seeming to realize. But he's still, he's averaging 9-10 points a week. So I think he's worth trading for. People see him more as, kind of fading. Experts are putting him later in the draft. He's no longer the bona fide wide receiver 2 behind Antonio Brown. I think this is the best time to trade for him because he still has quite a few years left and he's still elite.
I just want to take a second to say how amazing it is that Jim is choosing to do this, because we have talked for years about Julio Jones, who I'm a huge fan of, and he never gives him respect, which is okay.
I drafted him the year he broke his foot.
Well,
and that was awful.
Yeah, he's had a negative experience. Jim is a passionate human being. He cares about winning, and I understand. And I think that Julio Jones has earned a lot of the dislike, but I also think that he's a guy who's going to average like 1,400 yards a year, which is obscene, almost record-breaking. And he's a guy who, if he has a positive regression in touchdowns, like Jim mentioned, could be a top 5 guy. He was a top 6 last year in standard. There's no surprise if he becomes even better than that. So, Ben, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, just really quickly, I want to make a big point here. Again, we are talking about Dynasty. I think you can get him a lot cheaper under the radar in Dynasty. People might be willing to give up and, stocking future picks or maybe stocking a younger guy. I think he is a good target, especially if you're in win now mode. If you're talking about redraft, this is not going to apply. Somebody's still going to take him early first or second round. If we're talking PPR, he's
early second.
Right. If we're talking PPR, he's going higher than that. The dude has talent. He's really good, but I like that analysis for Dynasty as well.
I mean, Dynasty, you can even lowball with, maybe even your first-round pick and maybe get something for it. Maybe your first-round pick in something. I still think he's worth at least a first-round pick.
I mean, he's currently valued around like 1.01, 1.02, which I think is pretty fair.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 1.1, I would not give up Barkley for Julio.
No, I think Barkley's a special case.
Year. Yeah, but if you're looking for wide receiver help, I would try to get him this year, honestly.
Yep. Okay.
The only thing to add too is if you've already done your rookie draft like we have, and let's say you're trying to look for the 2019 2020 draft, at least 2019, it's a better receiver class than this year. So you might be giving up the next Julio. That is just something to keep in mind and just be a little more careful of if you're looking to do your first overall pick in the next couple of years, or at least your first round pick.
So, Ben, would you like to talk about your under the radar veteran player to trade for?
I did. It was T.Y. Hilton.
I was
still
just
like
testing
him.
you.
It's still a great pick. I think you should do it.
I tested you and you passed. Great work. You're going to do great here. Anyways,
Okay.
I'll cover my player. I dug deep. I went bargain barrel, where you go to like a Star Market and you get the discount item pretty much at the grocery store.
Nobody knows what that is.
What is Star Market?
Star Market. I'm in Massachusetts now, so the people who are
You
listening
could have
know.
just went with like Walmart or Dollar Tree, which are like national brands. Like, why
Star
didn't you do
Market's
that?
totally a national brand. You're just unaware. Anyways,
Okay.
I bet it's Boston.
That's the nation, though. If you talk to anybody in Boston, that's the nation.
New England forever. So I picked a player who's really kind of bottom of the barrel, but I think has the upside of being a tight end one, and that is Rico Gathers. He is a player who missed all of last season with a concussion, but he really, really impressed in preseason. The coaches talked highly of him. He had 106 yards and two touchdowns in 2 preseason games that he played in. Witten is gone now. To clarify, he's in Dallas. So Witten has retired as of this year. That opens a clear path for somebody to take over as the tight end one in that team. I think that Rico Gathers has showed the athletic profile and the ability to catch in clutch situations that will kind of pave the way for him to be the de facto tight end one. And I think you can get him, in a dynasty league at least, from another team for pennies. And I don't mean Rashad Penny.
For penny?
I'm going to stop. I'm going to really stop with that pun because that's horrible. But I really do think you can get him for pretty much nothing. A 3rd round pick the next year, just any wide receiver 3, a running back 4. Players will trade if they have depth at tight end that player away for nothing, and he's the type of player who has the upside in an offense that clearly relies on the tight end on 3rd downs and potentially in the end zone if he shows it. They provide a lot of value, and I think that he's a player that you can get for nothing who could turn around and be a tight end one in 1 to 2 years.
The only thing I want to disagree with you on here, and I'm just going to take what you meant by target one of these players a little differently. I think you can get him for less than pennies. I think you can get him for free because I don't think he's on anybody's roster. I think he's a dude you can
50 team.
Right, you're gonna tag this guy off of your waivers, and it's not gonna waste any of your fab. If you want to be cute and maybe waste a couple bucks in case somebody else has him on your radar, maybe you got some Cowboys fans who are kind of hip to Witten there, you might want to do it. If we're talking about doing a draft, when we started up our startup dynasty draft, we did a $200 budget. You're going to get that guy for $1 late if you want to take a swing for the fences. He is a guy to target. I really do like that analysis. Witten's gone. They love the tight end in Dallas. That dude's been hanging out for what seems like at least 75 years. So it's at least close to that. So it's going to be interesting. I do like that as a pick, but I think you can get him. I don't think you're giving up a 3rd round. I think, depending on how long your draft is, you're giving up your last round. Maybe. I think that dude maybe finds his way to waivers and you get him there.
If anything,
also, I would like to make the special request that we isolate the audio for when Murphy said New England forever. And we just play that anytime the Dolphins are playing the Patriots.
Okay. Anytime.
I just like to say that I'm the host.
Just for him, though.
I'm the host.
Just for him. Yeah.
2 of us are Miami fans.
Well, 2 of us are Miami fans. Said New England forever, but really meant it though, and just talking about some sort of weird fake Publix up there.
Idea: we isolate Jim's audio saying New England forever, and we use that instead for him.
That doesn't bother me though. I'm a Packers fan.
He would root for them though. Just to piss us off.
Okay, my girlfriend's a Patriots fan. We're all aware of it.
Just getting it out of the way.
We're all upset about it.
My girlfriend's a Baltimore Ravens fan. Fortunately, we have a little bit of rivalry with the Ravens and the Dolphins, but I think that we can coincide peacefully.
That's not true. We'd have to win games for that to happen.
I believe. But anyways, we just want to wrap up. Thank
Real
you to
quick,
listeners.
I got one more before you do that. One more veteran to target. Really quick veteran. Kenny Stills, a dude I think you can get super cheap. He's not super old. He's kind of getting there, but he's not super old. Just got rid of Landry. Parker's hurt a lot. Tannehill or whoever Brock Osweiler, let's go, has to throw to somebody. This dude was 24th best wide receiver last year. That's where T.Y. Hilton was without Andrew Luck. This dude is the wide receiver 3, fringing on a wide receiver 2, definitely a flex play. You could probably get Kenny Stills super cheap.
As another Dolphins
Also,
fan
if you
who
can
follows
get him, Aaron Rodgers is a great player.
Under the radar.
Under the radar. I think he could be QB1.
I want to say thank you for shitting on actually Kenny Stills with that fake-ass one.
Yeah.
Good call.
I do, in a serious
Kenny Stills
note,
could be the Aaron Rodgers of wide receivers, Ben says.
I do, in
don't
a
think
serious
that's true.
note, want to say that I do believe Kenny Stills has the upside as a Dolphins fan watching him. He's crazy fast. I think he has a more complete route tree than people give him credit for, despite being a downfield receiver in the previous offense. Definitely pick that guy up for pennies because you can do it.
Stop saying that.
For Rashad pennies.
For Rashad pennies on the dollar.
How many Rashad pennies does one Kenny Stills equal? Probably not much. Anyways, we just want to wrap up after we gave you that bonus player. Ben is so magnanimous. But we want to thank the listeners.
There, man.
Yes, we want to thank the listeners.
The listener?
All 4 of you. We're just getting started. Once again, we are the fantasy football backups, or the fantasy backups. We'll edit this to figure it out.
Or it's not a question.
Fantasy football backups?
I actually like that. We should make it a question. I think that's not bad.
Are we the backups?
Are we only second string? Oh, great.
We made it to second
We're the
string.
Blue Mountain State of podcasts.
Yes. But this is a wrap.
No, they were winners.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough. All right, get us out of here.
So this is a wrap. In the future, in our next podcast episode, we're going to be covering rookie running back rankings and breakdowns. So each of us will have rankings for at least the top 10 rookie running backs, and just a short breakdown of each player and why we care and why we think they belong where they are. We're going to talk about the veteran running backs to buy or draft at a premium. So players that you can get from previous years in Dynasty at a decent price, similar to what we did a little while ago with the Under the Veteran Raiders. Under the radar veterans. I speak English. And basically just cover running backs in general and really prep you for next season so that you can get the best bang for your buck in the rookie draft and then also in the trade market to get you going. So we just want to thank anyone who bothered to actually tune in and listen to us. We know we're not professionals, but we're trying. And look forward to the next podcast. Not very hard, but we're trying. And tune in the next podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. And that's about that. Thank you.